Another Kennedy is running for president. This time it's Robert F. Kennedy Jr. So this is his uncle is JFK. Now, just to go into the backstory of the Kennedys, this is a very there's a lot of coincidences allegedly, but we can see JFK. We all know what happened to JFK. Now his brother was the Attorney General under JFK. He was also taken out. If we go back before that, we have JFK's sister Rosemary. She was going through seizures and violent mood swings, and there was a lobotomy done on her, and that really screwed her up for the rest of her life. We have JFK's older brother, and he was actually supposed to be the one who was going to be president or run for president, and he was taken out in a plane crash. There are a lot of other coincidences that have created peril in the Kennedy family, and specifically for JFK. Now, JFK, before he got JFK'd, he was speaking out against secret societies, against the current federal agencies that had amassed a ton of power. So all the intel agencies they had just been bred, they had just been born, but they were seeing all of the information they could gather, and they were working under nefarious means. And this may be true to this day if we're making an educated guess. And because he had some power, some networking, some connections, not everything, he wanted to go after these agencies and shrink them, if not remove them entirely, because they were growing much too big for a centralized power. He acknowledged, JFK, that the people had to have enough balance of power. There had to be enough power with the people to balance out, to counteract all of the power that was amassing with these federal agencies. Because if they have too much power, they can gather your information, they can politically prosecute you, they can go after you. And we actually have seen, this has enveloped much after JFK, that this is actually started after World War II predominantly, but it's always been in the mix within different nations. This is not anything new to the United States of America, but shadow governments have existed for all periods of time. And when you have a shadow government, just to kind of paint the picture for you, sure, you have our representatives, our elected officials, or indirectly elected officials, such as the directors of the FBI, the CIA. I say indirectly elected because we appoint the president appoints the directors for the different agencies under him. But you'll have factions of an administrative state that have been in power for decades. So these are people who are not elected. They're in there for decades. These are the people who at the surface look like they're below the top of the hierarchy, let's say in the CIA. So we would think that the CIA director is at the top of the hierarchy, and on the surface he is. But if you go below that, there are people who have been there for decades, and they have their own hierarchy. And so if they consider you a temporary employee, like the CIA director is a temporary employee, you could be there long term. But typically how it works is the directors are appointed when there's a new president, and then removed when the next president comes in. So the next president can appoint his person, someone who politically aligns with him. This is a game of nepotism after all, for very good reason. We have to make sure we can trust and rely on people. And if there's someone from a previous administration or a different political party now that misaligns with our ideology, our views, and it's long-term harder to achieve things when we don't know if we can trust and reciprocate with people. So now we have different factions of government who siphon off money from our taxpayer money, right? We have all these spending bills. We're spending $1, $2, $3 trillion. Imagine a percentage of those bills. Most of the bills are garbage, but a percentage of those bills will go into the let's say hidden budgets, and these hidden budgets are not revealed to the American people. They're blacklisted, they're redacted. We can't see, there's no transparency. And so now these different factions of governments can use the funding, billions of dollars, tens, hundreds of billions of dollars, to fund certain projects, and that's a discussion for another time. Back to RFK Jr., he actually has a slight disability with his vocal cords. I just want to throw that out there. But he has been known, most recently, for spouting political truths in regards to the past few years, especially about the pandemic. He wrote a book about Fauci, for example, talking about all the mishaps, miscommunications, misinformation, so on and so forth. He's been labeled a conspiracy theorist by major institutions and people on the left. Now, I would say it is worth, whether you agree with him or not, looking into his work and making a determination for yourself. You have to remove all your bias, because there's going to be information that will trigger you, even if you're on the right or the left, it doesn't really matter. There's going to be information that triggers you. And you may see, oh, okay, this is the truth based off of the circumstantial evidence, or this is not the truth because he's connecting the dots improperly. Regardless, I will say there's some valid information there where he has done some due diligence. But in terms of being a president, this is not someone who, at least from my perspective, and now I'm throwing my opinion here, who has the fortitude of being president. To be president, again, this is all surface level, right? I don't personally know the guy. But just from what I know about RFK Jr., just from my research, he wouldn't be a good surface level representative. We also don't know how well connected he is, because that's important when you're president. How long he's been building his administration prior to running for president, because to become president, there's a couple ways you can become president. If you are part of the establishment and you rise up the ranks and you're put into the presidential position, your team has already been there as part of the establishment. And so you're really just doing the bidding of the establishment. It doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican. Establishment, for example, would be like George Bush and Dick Cheney in the 2000s. Or Obama in 2008. These are both establishment, even though they're from different political parties, they still move the agenda forward to the same cause, the same goal, the same ideological goal, the same profit goals. It doesn't really matter which party you're from. Or you can build up people in a network for decades, because it truly does take decades in the making, and then build a platform to become president. This is very difficult, which is why most people don't do it. Most people don't go this route, and it's actually harder to do it now in the modern period of time that we're in compared to if we go back to the 17 and 1800s. Even during the late 1800s, it started to become very difficult. Once the World War started and you had different interests with corporations, the military, it became extremely difficult, because now the establishment was born out of that ideological situation, and they want to maintain power. So they will do whatever is necessary. They'll have contingencies to maintain that power. The reason why I say you have to build up for decades is because you have to go against the establishment. The establishment is always going to run a candidate, and not just one candidate, multiple candidates. So if you're going up against the establishment or multiple candidates, you already have to have a team, a network that is already infiltrated the establishment to protect you, to make sure that you're able to run fairly and justly. If you don't have that, if you just decide 5 years beforehand, off the cuff, off the whim, to run, despite what our system has proposed, the status quo has proposed, not everyone can become president, because it truly does take decades in the making, a lot of strategy, a lot of people around you who ideologically agree with you, and you have to understand trust, respect, reciprocation, and competency. And it has to come from a benevolent form of action. Are there some rewards that you would benefit from? You have a certain status, you make a certain amount of money. Yes, but if you're going up against intellectual people who are malicious and they will do anything at any cost, and they already have the establishment, which has been running for, each establishment, let's say, this is theoretical now, lasts about 75 years. So 1776 plus around 75 years, we're close to the Civil War. So, 1776, you had the American Revolution, 1865, the Civil War, go 75 years after that. Now you have JFK, go 75 years after that. Now you have around 9/11, right? I'm not saying it's exactly 75 years, but about every 75 years, there's a change in the power structure, still part of the establishment, but just a change in the power structure. And so you really have to, now I don't know if RFK has been building this up for decades. He may just be running to get his name out there, to get information out there. I know he's been doing a lot of research, spouting a lot of information. I said that he came out with a book. So he may just want the information out there. This could also be a ploy to siphon off votes to have one candidate be higher than another candidate, right? I don't know what the game plan is here. I'm painting out different perspectives, and then everyone can do their own due diligence and create their own judgment. But we're identifying causes, effects, reasoning, incentives, motives. So RFK, this is the first time in a long time that we've seen a Kennedy run. And the Kennedys were actually a kind of like a dynasty. Think of, like, I don't want to say the Kardashians, or a monarchy, but our form of a monarchy during that period of time. And we saw someone as powerful as John F. Kennedy, and there's still a lot of controversy around this. There's actually released documents, so the controversy has been lessened, but to the average American, there's a lot of controversy around what happened with JFK, what really happened with JFK. People will discuss, the average person is okay discussing the controversial aspect of JFK, because it's been so long and the American government is starting to, I don't want to say release the truth because they're still hiding the truth, but a lot of people from the Warren Commission, which was the investigation of the JFK assassination, a lot of those people are gone now. So you do have certain people in the establishment who want to ensure that the institution of the United States of America is not compromised, because the faith of that institution is necessary for the people to have positive sentiment towards government. But they're more okay letting it go. They're more focused on today's issues and what they need to hide from the public today and not release for the next 75 years. So, for example, the Epstein stuff, we know that even those papers that they had, the Panama Papers, where people and elites, wealthy people are hiding their money. All of these there's a lot of documents that have been sealed from the public for 75 years, either through executive order, or in England they also have documents, because a lot of people in England, like Prince Charles, or I guess King Charles, or Prince Andrew, they were involved in certain situations. Even those documents have been sealed for 75 years because they don't want the public to know about what's going on now. They don't care as much about the past 75, 80 years. The only part they care about is maintaining the trust in the institutions so they can continue on what they're doing right now as the status quo, as the establishment. And so I see this as a neutral situation. I mean, great that he's running. A lot of people will run, they'll lose, but they'll gain the experience so they can run again and win the next time. That's a possibility. I more see it as a way for him to convey his information out there, because he has to do something, right? He's getting up there in age. He's been trying to spread truth. He's been censored. He's been suppressed. And so the only way he can get the information, get the truth out there, what he is spouting as the truth, and let people make their own decisions, is to get his name out in the public. How do you do that? Well, running for president is a good way to do that. I actually did not hear about this on mainstream media. I looked on a few mainstream media sites, what I could see. Maybe they had it for 5 minutes or something like that, but I couldn't see it anywhere. I could only see it from the independent news. And even then, it was very trivial. It was very small. Not a lot of independent news sources were actually saying RFK is running. Now, he's not a big-time candidate. He's not a politician or anything like that. But just the fact that this guy, who I would put him in the same category as a ton of other people who have been suppressed and censored, and they have not been able to spread their information, their data, their statistics, because it goes against the narrative. I would put RFK Jr. in that category. Just the fact that he's not getting talked about because he's in that category of people who are trying to spread information and he's being suppressed, very surprising, even coming from independent sources. So I did want to talk about that because it's important. He's just one candidate. He's one person. But there's a lot of things that are tied to him. And it really comes down to, it's not so much about the person, it's about the movement. It's about, okay, there is information out there, there are data out there that we have not been given access to. There are documents out there that have been classified for no good reason. We should have transparency where the American public has a right to know what has happened in the past 75, 80 years, even now. But of course, we're going to have the status quo is hide certain things from the public. The minority of people are going to try to dig for it. But there will be such a difficult battle between the minority of the population, those who actually want to search for this information, versus the elitist class who are trying to hide information because they're doing a lot of nefarious activity, that this battle can last for a long period of time. It's like lawfare. When you have one party versus another party who, let's say you have a big party, okay? You have a big corporation. They have a lot of money. They have a lot of resources. And you have another party who's trying to get information from the corporation, or they're involved in some kind of lawsuit where the corporation was doing wrongdoing. They were malicious. And you have someone who has some power, some resources. You can fight that. I mean, there are strategies that the corporation can use to make that lawsuit last for years and really drag it out and drain the time, energy, and resources of the minority player. That's kind of what the government is doing right now. And so it's a lifelong battle, because when you see all the resources, I mean, there's even, in Congress, there's even a slush fund to not disclose certain escapades that congressmen and women have been involved with. So you have people who are in Congress we've elected. They're supposed to be transparent because they're public servants, right? They're supposed to be serving our interests for the American people. And they've allotted their own fund. They've taken taxpayer money, they've taken that money, and they put it into a fund. So if any kind of person in Congress deals with some kind of allegation, sexual allegation, whether true or false, they can pay people off and have an NDA and not have that person disclose information in protection of the congressman or woman. And a lot of people don't even know that, right? So just the fact that we're not even getting transparency with our public servants should be a huge red flag to the average person. Now, the average person is doing their own thing. They're not really involved in watching videos like this or doing their own due diligence or keeping up with what's going on behind the scenes. They're just trying to put food on the table. They're just trying to watch their Netflix shows. But for the minority of the population who is actually interested in this stuff, and they want to seed out the bad apples, this is necessary work to be able to go after transparency, to be able to lift up people who are trying to expose certain information, or at least just present information to the people so that we, the people, can make our own decisions. That is what should be prioritized in a free society, in a society that needs to advance and progress and not hold on to secrets and information and hide it under the rug, which prevents our nation from escalating. And now it actually puts our nation at risk from other nations who are trying to gain leverage and find points of opportunity to attack against us. This is something that we actually need to care about.